Welcome to Laptop Radio. Today's topic is music and privacy, and we have Alan Chapell with us. He is a musician. Hello, Alan. How are you?
Hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about music and privacy, and together and separately as well, of course. First, tell us your story.
I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, and was playing music since I was 3 or 4. My dad's a jazz saxophone player. And so all my brothers and I took music lessons, and most of them felt like they were forced to. I felt like it was a privilege. So I took piano and trumpet and played classical piano and trumpet for a number of years, and then got into rock and roll. And by the time I was 15, I was in the studio recording my first EP with a guy named Jimmy Einer as a producer. And the Einer family is musical royalty, I like to say. Donnie ran CBS Music. Jimmy eventually ended up running one of the labels. But prior to that, he is probably best known for being the person who did the whole Dirty Dancing soundtrack. And he's just an iconic producer. And I played with a bunch of bands in college, and then ended up living in India for a while and played with a band there. And then came back in the late 90s from India and decided that I was going to give up music, at least for a little while. And I went to law school. I studied international human rights and European Union law. And that led me both into the digital media space, but also into the legal space. And back in 2003, I put out my shingle as a privacy attorney. And really for the last 15 years, I work with a bunch of tech companies, mostly as their chief privacy officer. And that's wonderful because it's a lot of fun and it's some interesting work, but mostly it helps me fund the music stuff, which is even more fun.
I love privacy. I think we know a lot of privacy attorneys. So I was actually working at eBay with Scott Shipman.
Oh, Scott.
Yeah, Scott.
I do. So I'll say this about Scott. When I first started working as a privacy attorney, the first thing I did literally was reach out to the chief privacy officers at Microsoft and eBay and a whole bunch more. And Scott, I think, was the second person that I talked to.
Yeah.
And firstly, a super smart guy, and he couldn't have been nicer.
Yeah, so he's awesome. I think eBay were part of a privacy think tank at that time. So it was cool working in privacy. And then I was an attorney at PayPal, and I was working with Scott Hodes, who you also know. Wow, you know all the privacy officers.
It's still a little bit of a tight-knit community. When I first started, I think that there were maybe 1,000 people worldwide in the International Association of Privacy Professionals. And I don't know, is there 250,000 worldwide now? Maybe more. But even still, it's a tight-knit group. And Scott's a great guy. Both of them are.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I also go to a lot of Ian's conferences at the law firm as well. So I'm really excited to talk to you. In the last 6 months, I think I have spoken about privacy and blockchain at least 2 times. One on the principles of privacy, and then the other one is on the California Privacy Protection Act and how that relates to blockchain and how that is different from GDPR. So let's talk about music and how you integrate, or if you do, integrate privacy and internet challenges into music. I've listened to some of your music. There's one that's called A Work for Dignity. I love that. And I could relate that in a way.
Yeah, I think that as a songwriter, you really do try to write about the things that are coming up in your mind and in your heart every day. And I think that the album Penultimate in particular, which is my 4th album, was really about the feeling of alienation and dystopia that I think is brought by a lot of the modern tech world.
And what are some of those for Working for Dignity? This is my interpretation. As an artist, you're the one who created. Based on what I've seen, I see the issues of working for a company, of course, trading your dignity with it, like having that identity or dignity that is stripped away from you sometimes. And you're basically almost trading that. I see a little bit of surveillance in it. And I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, I feel very lucky because I'm able to make a living and I'm not employed under the legal definition. I've got my own little practice and I work with companies because I think they're fun and because they're nice people.
Yeah.
and it helps that they pay their bills.
Yeah.
But I'm in a very different position and I'm grateful for it than a lot of others who end up having to go into a work relationship
Mhm.
where I think the trade-off is a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's okay to actually detach yourself and talk about some of these challenges because they become feedback to the company. Even today, with employment issues like Uber and even Lyft, are they contractors? Are they employees? They don't have health benefit, but it's almost quasi employee, but yeah, they can arrange their time. Like, where are we going? And how does that impact us? And I think music and art really shape our consciousness because by listening to it, it gives us a thought, something different, something to think about. And then I think it helped raise that consciousness.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
think that what I try to do is I try to create these pop melodies and
Hmm.
something that somebody is going to listen to. And they say, that's a neat melody or hook. I like the beat of that song.
Hmm.
But hopefully, after a couple of listens, they'll realize that there's a message there. And that message might be a faux parody of
Hmm.
confession of Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. It might be talking about global warming
Hmm.
or the environment. But you have to listen a couple times to really get that. But
Hmm.
hopefully, people do.
Okay. Awesome. I just listened to Iggy as well, and I love that.
Yeah, Iggy is a very different message. Iggy is about some of my younger days in the East Village of New York,
Hmm.
where there's always these guys whose sole life seems to be partying and debauchery,
Yeah.
and really this was the Iggy is an old friend of mine who has actually moved on and is now happily married. But boy, back in the day, he gave the world a run for its money.
Yeah, yeah, very James Bondish in terms of the views on women. So, what inspired you when you made each piece? I love the creativity, I love the art, and the ones that I've seen, I like the cartoon, and I love also how it really creates a story from the music as well as the visual.
Thanks. Yeah, I tend to approach it a little bit differently for each song. Almost every time I'll write the chords
Mhm.
and usually the melody lines will be the first thing.
Mhm.
Every once in a while I get really lucky and I know exactly what I want to write about
Mhm.
right then. Because that makes things much easier. If you know what the story that you're trying to tell is, you can write that story and hopefully you'll nail that story. But most of the time, I don't know. And I'm just trying to figure it out as I'm humming a melody, walking through the houseboat community of Sausalito or through the West Village in New York City, which are my two primary writing places. But really, what you're trying to do is unlock the story that's inside you. And so oftentimes, I won't have any idea what the story is going to be about. This past weekend, I started writing something that all I can tell you is it's going to be about when the music plays again.
Mhm.
And I don't know what that's going to be yet.
Mhm.
But I think what it's going to be is that all these musicians right now with COVID are not able to do what they love.
Mhm.
And they haven't been able to do what they love for 6 months.
Mhm.
And I don't want to trivialize some of the other stories taking place as a result of COVID.
Yeah.
But I do think this is an important one because musicians, most of us, don't make a lot of money doing what we do.
Mhm.
We do it because we love it.
Mhm.
And not being able to do it is difficult,
Mhm.
particularly when that's who we are.
Mhm. Let's discuss privacy and music, not just broader privacy for internet companies, but privacy as it applies to music or music companies. As you're making music, do you find privacy relevant to the music industry as a whole?
Yeah, I can just speak for myself. And I don't think that the music world's big issue is privacy. I think the music world's big issue is grappling with a business model
Mhm.
that enables musicians to make a living wage.
Mhm.
And this isn't just the last 20 years. This is something that goes back a long ways. But as we've transitioned from the post record company world
Mhm.
into wherever we are right now, if you're not one of the big platforms, those guys are making plenty of money. But I don't know that anybody who isn't Taylor Swift is really making a ton of money on
Mhm.
these platforms. And that's a challenge that hopefully is going to be addressed over the upcoming years.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was also thinking about privacy. which is a big
Oh,
issue.
yeah.
I know privacy is not an issue, but I think the other one is. And I think hopefully for smaller musicians are not that famous, that their musics are protected and not exploited by consumers or even by the big labels.
Again, I'm only going to speak for myself, but I don't see for somebody at my level
Mhm.
that piracy is a big concern, because right now I'm willing to trade money or revenue
Mhm.
for exposure almost every day. And so if you told me that somebody took one of my songs
Yeah,
and played it for a million people,
yeah,
and I didn't get a dime for that,
yeah.
I would say, what country are they in? Because I want to go tour there.
Oh my gosh, I would be
Well,
happy
thanks.
to actually feature some of your music anywhere. I'm making augmented reality effects on Instagram, and I have over 100 million impressions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
yeah. If you like donate, at least let me use one or two of your song. I'll be so happy.
Welcome that. Absolutely. You
But
have my, here, we have it recorded. You have my permission.
okay, let's talk about the bigger internet privacy challenges and data. I think there's an interplay between data and privacy, as well as AI. What are some of the stuff that scare you with regards to privacy?
I think that right now, the concern I have is that most people are
Mhm,
not aware of what it is that they're giving up.
mhm.
So you can't have anything resembling an equal value exchange if one side doesn't really understand what it is that they're giving up. And some of that is that I don't think that people fully understand the ramifications of having everything or most everything being public. And I think that's a real challenge. I also think that there are back end integrations taking place today
Mhm.
within large platforms that are going to have implications over the next 3 to 5 years that nobody, including privacy professionals, have really thought about. So, to the extent that some iteration of medical records or
Mhm.
insurance information makes its way into the mega databases being created by these companies,
Yeah.
that's going to be really problematic. The best piece of privacy advocacy I have ever seen, and it's now 15 years old, was
Mhm.
done by the ACLU. And I'd encourage you to take a look. It's the ACLU pizza video. It's
Okay.
still on their site. But what it does is it simulates what it's like to order a pizza from a pizza store that is plugged into the national data grid
Okay.
and what the implications of that are. So for me, I think that's something that we, and I say we as a member of the digital media community and as the privacy community,
Mhm.
we need to do a better job of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that scared me this year is I'm a Claire member, and I go through the airport and they scan my eyes and my fingerprints. So I receive a notification that they are going to mine data. They're going to combine our biometrics with our marketing data. And that is a bit scary because if they get hacked, that means someone has a copy that they can use and put in avatars and AI and synthetic identities to pretend to be me.
Yep. And the only thing I would disagree with you is you use the word if they get hacked. And I,
Yeah,
I
I
just
know.
don't think it's really a when, right? One of the funny, maybe it isn't funny, but perverse outcomes of data breach notification laws over the last 15 years
Yeah.
is now they're so routine that we don't even notice. There are so many examples of data breaches that I think people have become a little immune to them.
Yeah, I think they get trivialized. I remember when I was at eBay, when there's a data breach, it gets everywhere. It's in the news and everything. But over the years, I think because there's just so many of them, it has been trivialized. And that's scary because I don't think news people actually write about it much nowadays. They decide what they publish, but it's sad.
Yeah, I agree. If there's one silver lining from this, I think now as a consumer, with relative ease, I can lock my credit
Hmm.
and unlock it with relative ease. Now, I don't know that everybody does that,
Hmm.
but that's super helpful because I'm not concerned a year away from the credit bureau getting a data breach.
Hmm.
What I'm concerned about is 5 years from now,
Hmm.
because the thieves who took that data are smart enough that they're probably not going to do anything in the year one.
Mhm.
It's down the line. And so you really need to be vigilant nowadays.
I think not just getting data from one company, they can also combine data from different company. And I think that's one of the scariest thing is because they can have more holistic view of you.
Yeah.
So they can get your payment data, they can get your medical data, they can get pictures of you from everywhere now. And then they can get your eyeballs and then get your fingerprints. That's the scariest thing. So if DMV has all the information about me and they get hacked too, as well as the credit companies and Facebook and the mega databases of the world. And then you have data brokers selling our information left and right that nobody talks about, Axiom and and a
Oh,
bunch of
yeah.
affiliates and a bunch of new ones that just show up. I think there's tons of them that showed up because I was opting out on everything. And there's ones that, oh, and I noticed that when you opt out to them, you don't want to use your real email address and phone number because they may get your data because you just confirm it and they could resell them. So it's pretty scary.
Yeah, there's an upside to having all this easy free flow of data, and we get instant credit here, and there's some advantages to that. But there's a downside, and I would say it's fair to say that the downside has not been fully appreciated by the American consumers and certainly not by the Congress of the US.
Do you think we need more education? Do you think that companies should be more responsible in terms of data and privacy?
I say yes to both of those, but I do think we need a comprehensive privacy law in the
Mhm,
US. I don't know that everything about the GDPR is perfect,
mhm,
but it is a masterfully crafted document.
mhm.
And I don't know that everything there would work in the US, but there's a lot of there to build on. And heck, they even took a lot of it for the first California Consumer
Yeah,
Privacy Act.
they
So
did. They did.
and so I think that's one thing that we need. I think that the one thing that the Europeans did, which was really smart,
Mhm,
is they mandated, as best one can,
mhm,
that companies need to think through
mhm,
what data they actually need
mhm.
and why they need it and to document those decisions. And I think that's something that would be a good best practice for companies, even if it isn't required.
Yeah, and I think in California, the legislation just passed. They basically is going to establish an agency, a privacy agency. And I was pretty excited about that because I remember when there's hardly any privacy attorneys. And then
Yeah.
now we're going to have an agency that delegates itself on studying privacy. How great is that? Oh my gosh, finally.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that agency gets developed and
Mhm.
who ends up running it. I guess we'll know in the next couple of months.
Yeah, hopefully they have really good people there. The people always make an agency, I think.
Yeah.
But I read them, and the legislation is really details about each piece of data, and they actually segregated and segmented it out. And then they also included children privacy as well, which I thought was really important. There is a limit, so it excluded a bunch of startups. I'm not sure if the 25 million is high or low, as long as it applies to Facebook and we could opt out. I guess.
Yeah, I think Facebook will meet the revenue threshold almost no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And this actually is one of the reasons why I think we need something at the federal level, because without it, you're going to have a whole bunch of different state rules,
Mhm.
which sometimes are in conflict, and it's going to make things a little bit more difficult. On the one hand, I guess you could say that's great for privacy attorneys because you'll have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But for the businesses that we support, you really want to have some semblance of a simplified national standard for privacy. And without something at the federal level, that's going to be really difficult.
Do you think someone is working on that or actually lobbying for that? That would be awesome if someone is.
Oh, yeah, no, I can tell you that there's a whole bunch of entities within Congress who are working on it. And there's a group called Privacy for America, which is more of an advertising industry group that's pushing for a federal law. But so, yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility. I think that predicting what is going to happen in the US Congress over the next 2 years, my money is on little to nothing, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm just thinking about COVID and hopefully we'll do something to resolve certain
Yeah.
emergencies first and then take care of privacy and certain other technology that's advancing so fast like AI and biometrics and biotech. I think the legislation really needs to catch up with all the new technology and also blockchain as well. It tracks data. And there's just certain things that are public, certain things are private. So it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think 2021 will be a very interesting year in the world of privacy and in a whole bunch of fronts.
And also privacy and money, since I've been working on a lot of Bitcoin blockchain. If we would have a national digital dollar, cash is anonymous pretty much. But with a blockchain, besides Facebook, it's probably one of the largest tracking device there is. So it's going to be interesting to see how money will be tracked and behind the scene, how those are going to be used.
Yeah. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how all this develops. It's going to be a big year.
Let's talk about Alexa and music and privacy. Because I use Alexa to read books and to listen to music. However, it's also listening to me at home or in the office. So I unplug it currently for over 2 years now because I don't want to spy in the office. And as an attorney, sometimes you don't want people to listen to your conversation. And even when you talk to your friends as well, that's kind of freaky. Of course, Amazon claims that they're not listening to us, but I sometimes code. And so I know that they basically record everything. So how do you think we should address that?
I don't know. I think part of the story there is consumer education.
Mhm.
I do think that some stricter rules around exactly what can be captured by them with potentially some audits. I know in the US, we tend to view things that make business more difficult as bureaucratic and therefore unfavorable. But I do not see a world where it's healthy to continue the status quo. I think in the same way that a browser is not supposed to be tracking the websites that you visit to learn more about you or to serve targeted ads or for insights, but we've created these audio browsers that are not subject to that same rule set.
I feel like when I'm interviewing you on Zoom, and this have happened before, I think I was talking to someone about archery a couple episodes ago. I go to Instagram and an archery ad shows up. I know that they're listening to us through the computer somehow. There's some beacons there. We have cookie beacons that follow us around and give us ads. And some of them are really annoying. I'm really skinny, as you can tell, but I get a lot of ads about losing weight. Which is super weird. And
Yeah.
so I know it's not perfect because I think the AI is not perfect. That's why it's really annoying, because even when they're following you, you would expect to see perfect ads that you like. So I feel like a world with AI, VR, with AI, with blockchain, with Internet of Things, there's different ways that they can put in little spyware or trackers and in REST APIs and stuff like that to actually listen to us, do sound, voice, do video, do website, do IoT, do blockchain, AI. So we're basically followed everywhere, and also from the sky, satellites and everything.
Sure.
So how should we live in this world where we're being watched all the time? And what is our expectation of privacy?
The expectation of privacy has been narrowed pretty consistently since about 1968 or 69. I think that for me, what I do is I take deliberate steps to unplug. I will log out of Facebook and Twitter, in part because I know that if I'm logged out, I'm going to be less likely to use them. No, just being candid. I try to take steps so that I'm aware that the world is watching of sorts. But I recognize that a lot of people who are running headfirst through very busy lives don't always have the time to take a step, take a deep breath, and really think through this kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we're going to end up. It's funny, in 1883, Kodak released the first Instamatic camera. And it was a huge privacy issue, particularly because people were concerned about pictures being taken of them when they were on the beach and that they were unclothed. And that's 40 years ago, 150, 140 years ago. And I still think that technology is kept 2 paces ahead of our own sensibilities. And it's hard to know where that line is going to be drawn.
Yeah, but today people want to be unclosed and to be Instagram famous. And because we're trained to have that and like that likes. So if you go to Instagram today, if you follow a lot of the celebrities, most of the pictures do not contain a lot of clothes. So, and people want that. They want a lot of followers. They want that attention. I think it has become gamified. It's different now.
Yeah.
And Instagram replaced their like button with a shop button. It's, hey, you're training us to actually push that button, and now you want us to go shopping. And it's really different now. I wanted to talk about music though, because that's a passion. How much privacy stuff do you put into your music? And when you do, what inspire you?
I think that there was a lot around privacy and just a feeling of powerlessness in today's age in the album Penultimate, which was my fourth. But I would say that more often than not, my songs are about stories about people that I know. And it might not even be about me, but I did a song about my favorite yoga teacher was telling a story at the beginning of yoga class. And sometimes when people tell the story, they're telling more than they really think, that they're telling a little bit about themselves. And just based on her little story, I wrote a song that'll be out in album 7 in a year or so. And so a lot of times that's the type of thing that I'm getting into. I'm just trying to get into the essence of the little stories that lead our day-to-day lives. Sometimes that's about privacy, certainly not always.
Yeah, no, I understand. This is really nerdy and geeky.
Good,
I
good.
actually made a augmented reality game on privacy.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. I
Cool.
did. I'll send it to you. But
Yeah,
basically,
please.
it's middle America. All the homes look the same because it's a runner game. And you're driving, you're in this cool car, and there's cookies on the floor. Cookies, and then also data breaches because you have locks or unlocked and data CPUs and stuff. And you're basically driving this car and you have to jump through them because if you touch them, you die. It's a very simple privacy game and it went viral. It's even
Oh, please
cooler.
send it to me.
Yeah, I have to send it to you. But again, just like you, I'm more of a creative artist. I know how to play drums, but that's about it.
Cool. No, drums are great.
Yeah, but yeah, so I do a lot of visual arts and I understand. I think as an artist, we tell stories and sometimes we tell stories of things that we know. Privacy is something that I care about. And I think if you actually listen to a lot of my shows, there's different kinds of privacy theme. Privacy and GDPR, privacy and rap. I have a friend who rapped about privacy. It's cool. So when I saw you and your art, I was just like, wow, this is awesome.
Oh, thanks. A group called the Future of Privacy Forum
Mhm.
had a playlist going for a while about top privacy related songs. I thought they had a Spotify playlist,
Okay.
but it's a neat idea. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, yeah, that is awesome. And then is there anything else you want to emphasize or share that I have not asked you?
I hope people that are enjoying this conversation give a listen on Spotify. It's Chapell. Chapell is the name of the band. And you can find me at thisischappell.com.
Yeah, it's also a YouTube that is called This is Chapell. I was just listening to a bunch of Chappelle music. And
Wonderful.
I'll play it also here.
Well,
So
fantastic.
yeah, I love providing wisdom to the community, and I think it's important that we pass little bits of wisdom on as we speak about different topics. What is one piece of advice or wisdom that you wanted to share with the community?
I can just tell you what's worked for me is
Mhm,
get people's advice, get people's feedback,
mhm,
surround yourself with people who love you
mhm,
and who you trust. But at the end of the day, you've got to go on what's in your gut.
mhm.
If I had listened to people, I never would have put together my law practice. I had a bunch of people telling me that I couldn't do it and that I should go to a law firm. I've had people tell me that I don't know how to write music or that they don't like the style of the music. And they're entitled to that opinion and that's all cool. But don't let anybody else limit who you can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, especially with privacy. It's so new at that time too.
Yeah, and there was a period there because I was a bit early.
Yeah.
And so it took me a while to get any revenue. There was a while where I had some heart to heart talks with friends over beers, and they were saying, look, man, why don't you just take another gig somewhere else?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't going to work out. And I said, I don't know. I think this is going to work out eventually. And I know that if I keep holding on and doing what I'm doing, that good things are going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I get that a lot. I didn't go to a firm either, and I went in-house. I worked at Cisco, eBay, Samsung, and Apple when I was in law school, and then
Yeah.
then went
Those are
to a
great
triple
companies.
play. Yeah, I went to triple play company, and then I went to PayPal, and I think I was a pretty good PayPal attorney. So, and even when I wanted to do entrepreneurship, people were like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Just helping people look at their deck. People are like, "No, you can't do that because I'm a woman and." They have gender limitations and all kinds of limitations that I don't even know. There's like probably a whole list of them, and constantly getting yelled at by people because of what I wanted to do. Even making augmented reality, they're like, you're making silly things. Someone got to start from 0 to 100 million. What could you say now? Just today, someone called me a kid, for talking about having a plan and collaborating and forming best practices to fight against COVID. I think the government was thinking about working with New Zealand. So I was just like, oh, maybe consider working with Taiwan too. Because even though they're little islands and it seems to be impossible because their numbers are so high, but someone got to start.
Yeah.
Getting feedback and tidbits don't really hurt. I think getting feedback is fine. And I think it's really up to you, like you said, to determine what device that you take and just really go within yourself, I think, and finding that answer is really important.
Yeah. I think other people want to define you,
Hmm.
and you're really the only person that can do that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you really need to keep that in mind. I've tried to keep that in mind
Yeah.
over the years, because the thing to keep in mind is that when people try to define you, it's usually based on their limitations.
Mhm.
And they often will try to define you without giving it a whole heck of a lot of thought because they're busy with their own lives.
Mhm.
I'm not saying some people have good advice and you should take that in, but boy, at the end of the day, you got to do what you think is right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for your time.
Well, so nice chatting with you, Michelle. Please send me that game. I want to check it out.
Yeah, I will. Bye bye.
Bye bye.